Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and today we have the awesome Robin Bennett. Robin, how are you?
I'm doing great, Andy. I'm excited to be here.
I am so glad to have you here. It's been a couple of years since I've seen you and talked to you in person, so this is just like coming back to life here. It's amazing. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit, what do you have exciting going on? Tell us a little bit about yourself so listeners get a chance to know who you are.
Sure. So I have spent the pandemic working probably harder than ever. And I know that's not the case for everybody, but I do a lot of freelance marketing. So I work with mostly independent agencies. I do some work on my own, very limited, because mostly what I offer is copywriting. But copywriting doesn't happen in a vacuum without marketing strategy, without design. So typically I work with what I call non-agency agencies, people that have blown up the agency formula and are putting together like a very small group of the best talent to help clients. Well, when the pandemic hit, everybody was like, people we thought at first might go, oh my gosh, we can't do any marketing. This is, insensitive. But then we were fortunate to have a lot of clients who were extremely essential. So a lot of industrial clients that made laboratory equipment.
Wow.
That was used to help create the vaccines. So I think we were busier than ever last year.
Wow.
Yeah, working with essential industries and helping them pivot because everything changed. And even the way that we approach marketing changed. So I've been head down doing that. And then trying to figure out also kind of how to grow my own thing and nurture, some of the stuff that I'm doing on the side. So that's sort of what I've been doing.
That's awesome. And it's interesting to hear you mention being busier than ever during the pandemic, because I think a lot of people had that mindset and jumped right into staying busy. And some people who weren't busy may have been able to help themselves if they were able to find a way to be busier. Because when we get to those places where our life changes, whether it's with our control or not, that's when you kind of have to jump in and create the direction you want it to go. And that can take a lot of hard work. And if everything comes to a standstill, it's almost like, okay, well, now I need to either be going to school or learning something or starting my own thing up or taking the time to just even be busy recreationally if you know that that you think you have some security to go back to. So you might not need to be rearranging your entire life forever, but you have this downtime. It's like, well, let's, read more than ever, cross-stitch more than ever, whatever it is that your thing is. But there are those segments like where you were, where the industry is changing, it's shifting, it's in greater need than ever in a different way than anybody's ever seen. And now there's this forced, wow, the world seems to be on pause, but I don't feel that at all.
Right. And and I went through that whole like, oh, well, I'm going to read I made a list of all these, classic books I haven't read. I'm going to read, and I'm trying to, slog through War and Peace. And I'm like, oh, I'll read. I read all the Russian greats that I haven't read. And I'm like, whoa, no, I'm doing. And when I say I've been busy, I think we can look at that and go, oh my God, she's been in drudgery working. But it was this wonderful gift within the pandemic that I feel like previously marketing had been all about like marketing and trying to grow your audience, trying to get more customers. And the shift during the pandemic really became closer to what I like to do as a marketer, which was all about how are you going to serve your customers.
Wow. Yeah.
So it became much more about like making sure that the shipments were there on time, making sure that they were onboarded correctly, that everybody knew how to use the equipment. It became this much more of this service model that
Mhm.
I think is missing so much in marketing. Most of the time people are just like, sales, 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 let's get the sale.
Right.
And we've had this nice, wonderful pivot to no, really serving the
Mhm.
customer and what they need now and helping them. And that feels really good.
Yeah,
So,
it's like marketing with really strong meaning behind it.
right, which is how I've always approached marketing.
Mhm.
So it was a good fit. And, we were well aligned to do that because it's all about, your customer doesn't leave you once they've made a purchase.
Right.
If anything else, we spend all this time as marketers trying to get more and more people, but
Mhm.
it's like, what are you doing with the people that have already entrusted you? How
Right.
are you developing that relationship, earning that trust and loyalty and respect? And that's the kind of human relationship. Those are the types of even email campaigns and things like that that
Mhm.
are just more fun to write. Let's be honest. I mean, you can
Yeah.
have more fun.
Mhm. It's like, yeah, now that you trust us, now that you're here, now that we have this relationship, what's the next thing we're gonna do together? What's the next trip? What's the next ticket we're gonna buy?
Right.
Whatever that is.
Right.
Yeah. That is
Nobody thinks about that post-sale messaging, right? That
Mhm.
post-sale relationship. What does service mean? Because you can sell and sell and sell and you can do great, but then if somebody picks up the phone and talks to your service department and they're terrible and they have a terrible experience, well, then you've lost that customer or you have the potential to have.
Right.
So marketing became more of a larger scope of service, and that was a really happy, I guess, little benefit
Mhm.
from the pandemic, that it was something we always thought was possible, and then it's starting to become the norm, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Right, yeah, exactly, and that's one thing when I talk to people about finding meaning in their work and, maybe you're whatever it is that you're doing, you might be selling cars for a living or selling furniture, and if you don't see that as something that's very exciting or you don't find the meaning in it, you sometimes just need to reframe. It's like you don't have to be building homes in a third world country to be bringing joy into the world. If you're selling furniture, you could be helping a family create their home and have it be a welcoming place. If you're
Absolutely.
selling cars, maybe you're helping someone find a car that they can afford to get to their first job or to get back on feet on their back on track or keep their kids safe. Whatever it is, you
Right.
have to find that meaning that is beyond the transaction.
And I think we are kind of programmed to look for this ideal job, this
Mhm.
ideal position, this I like to think back in my life and I go, my first existential crisis was at about the age of 4 or 5, right? Well, my uncle's like lifting me up in the air and bouncing me around, and he says to me, "So, what do you want to be when you grow up?"
Oh, yeah,
And
the
I'm
dreaded
like,
question.
"Oh, dagger in the heart. Like, what? Why am I
Mhm.
thinking about this now? Why do I have to start thinking about this? What do you mean?" And it's funny because I look back at it and I think he probably did ask me, "What do I want to be when I grow up?"
Mhm.
But I interpreted that question as, "What do I want to do?" Right?
Oh, right.
And there is a distinction, right?
Mhm.
So this has been my biggest struggle throughout my career, and I love the fact that this is about your awkward career because that's been my struggle. I kept thinking, "Oh, just like there's a perfect mate out there for you." No, there's not. There's
Mhm.
not a perfect job out there for you. There's probably not a perfect career out there for you, but there is dignity. You can bring yourself and dignity to whatever job you do, right?
Right.
So I that's how I finally kind of got rid of a lot of the pressure of like, "Oh my god, I have to be this."
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time frustrated, right?
Mhm.
Because I was like, "Oh, I really want to be a poet. That's what I've always wanted to do, but that doesn't really pay very well."
Right. Yeah, there's always that line of the practical side where it's like, "Well,
Sure,
this is what I
right?
like to do, but I can't sit at home and color all day and turn that into an income." And then all of a sudden you see someone who figured out how to do it, and it's like, "Way to go, Picasso, but how do I do that?"
Right.
But
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to either emulate and turn our passions and our avocations into what literally feeds us and keeps a
Mm-hmm.
roof over our head, versus going, and I can hear my dad, who has passed away, unfortunately, several years ago, but I can hear him in my head going, there's a difference between a vocation and an avocation.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can, like, I show up every day to write marketing emails and retargeting campaigns and Facebook ads and, white papers about temperature control, whatever it is that I'm writing from a copy perspective, whatever marketing strategies I'm working on, I'm still bringing the poet's perspective to it.
Sure.
So I've learned to kind of, mm, you know, be a little more gentle about how I look at it.
Yeah.
Be
And I think
okay
that,
with going, I can be commercial, I can have
Mhm.
a commercial thing and a passion thing, and it's okay.
Right. And regardless, the person who's reading that piece of paper, whether they're in a 3-piece suit in a boardroom or, sitting at home on their couch, it's a human being with feelings and emotions, and that's who you need to reach out to, regardless of the role they're in or the role that you're in when you're writing it.
Right, right. And I started to look at, now this is one thing I did in the pandemic. I started putting together a list of poets who that was not their profession.
Wow.
They were doctors, lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, they a lot of them in advertising, a lot of them in the
Okay.
agency world, but they were well-known poets. I mean, William Carlos Williams was a physician.
Oh, wow.
So we, this, I mean, it's being able to welcome both sides of that stuff. There's always a struggle between the commercial and the artistic. And I think any of us who are creative and artistic think that, oh, we're not a real artist unless we're all in on this thing.
Right. Yeah.
Then we struggle to gimmick it to the
Mm-hmm.
point where it's like, it's so gimmicky that's now I'm depending on my art to
Right.
feed me, shelter me, clothe me. And it becomes this strained relationship with the art. Now, I can't say to everybody which way is right for them,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I know for me, when I was like, you know what, I actually do like business. I do like helping people.
Yeah.
I do like not just helping the company, but helping their customers understand this is what's coming next. This is who to turn to, being very transparent, building that relationship. I love that. But even when I started going to No Longer Virtual, where you and I met,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like an outsider because I felt like I'm supposed to go, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm all in on this idea.
Right.
And I was like, I kind of don't want to leave the advertising agency business world, but I do want to develop these other parts of myself, but not to the, I'm not ready to jump completely out of there.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah. And I think that's we need to be okay with where we're at and not feel like we have to change something. It's like I think a lot of times we ask questions about people and where they're going in life, and we might not even be trying to put that on the person, but the person is thinking, "Oh, is this not okay here? Like, is this a problem? Should I not be here?" And it's
Right.
like, no, I'm just curious. Is that where are you fulfilled there? Is that where you're staying?
Sure.
And
Sure.
you've touched on so many good things. Is that what would you say is your awkward? Is it something that you've already mentioned, or is it?
It touches on it, I think. And Andy, I thought about this a lot. I guess the best way I can put it is it's like I'm a person who has always refused to go into a box,
Okay.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm the poet slash marketer slash copywriter slash salesperson slash I live in the slash, let's just add more and more and more and more
Mm-hmm.
to them. I'm very much, I think I put a lot of anxiety on myself thinking I was supposed to niche down or niche down, depending on
Mm-hmm.
who's
Depending
listening.
on who you're talking to.
I put a lot of pressure on myself to specialize, to be an
Mm-hmm.
expert in something. And even when you're in marketing, it becomes like, oh, you're a copywriter. Well, what do you specialize in? Are you specialize in landing pages? Do you specialize in ghostwriting for thought
Oh yeah.
leadership? Do you specialize in X, Y, Z? And I'm like, Yes, 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 yes.
Hmm.
Oh, and I come from a PR background and a sales perspective. And I thought there was a problem with me,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
And I remember being at the same No Longer Virtual, I think, where we met, and being in all these sessions, and people were like, define your business problem. And I'm like, which
Oh,
business?
yes. I remember that question.
I'm like, which business? My business, the agency who's my main
Hmm.
client that I work with business, or their clients' businesses? And then, I mean, it was like, what? What? We're all entrepreneurs or this or this or that. What are you talking about? And
I remember
then,
that question because I was sitting there going, "Can I raise my hand and say I just don't know what I'm doing?" like,
right. Well,
like
right.
that's what I want to say. I think I even said it to Amy Bloshko sitting next to me, and I just was like, I'm here because I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't even know where to start.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
my hand was like, I don't know how to focus. Am I supposed to focus on one of these?
Hmm.
Um, because they all feed each other, right?
Right.
And so I guess my big awkward was feeling like I needed to niche down, be an expert, having all this pressure going, okay, Robin, figure out what it is. Again, my
Hmm.
uncle tossed me in there. What is it you want to do? What is it that you want to be when you grow up?
That question's
And
living in your head.
I had a meltdown. Like I literally had to walk outside at No Longer
Mm.
Virtual
Wow.
and call my client because then I had all these coaches going, oh, I can help you figure this out. I can help you determine. So then they all start with their process of like, I can fix you, right? Like
Hmm.
I can help you zero in on one of these things. And I'm like, "Ugh." I'm
Yeah.
having a panic attack because I'm like, I don't want to. If I wanted to narrow down at any point in my life, I'd have probably done it. I've been on
Hmm.
this planet for 5
Well, and
decades.
yeah, it's kind of like when you look at, you know, all of your beloved things, it's like I can't let go of any one of those. They all mean too much. Like
Right.
if I give this one away, it's like, oh no, I can't do that. And well, what if oh no, I can't give
Uh,
that one away.
I I can't. Like, I can't with, like, Marie
Mm.
Kondo. Like, she's like, "Oh, like, look at something if you love it, give it away." I mean, when she said, "Get rid of your books," I'm like, no,
Yeah, we're
not gonna
done.
we're done. I'm not your audience, and that's
Mhm.
okay." But
Right.
I felt that struggle. So my awkward is that I refuse to really focus in a way or
Hmm.
even become a specialist or an expert at anything. And I thought that that was something that needed to be repaired in me. I thought there was something that was wrong with me,
Hmm.
particularly in a world where we live um, with expertise and everybody wants to be a thought leader or an expert, and where people themselves have become brands. And
Hmm.
it's like, oh, well, this is your brand. This is my brand. This is who I am. And I'm like, I'm fluid. Like every day I change. Who I was a week ago is not who I am now. Hopefully I will continue to evolve. But that was that's my awkward. My awkward is around naming who it is, what I am, what do I do?
Hmm. And
Defining that.
keeping it open.
Right. And I think that I have come to peace, and I'm
Hmm.
actually delight in the fact that I'm a generalist. I've
Hmm.
actually evolved that now to being a universalist
Okay, I like that.
because I take in I dabble in a lot of things, and in doing so, it's helped me creatively because I am exposed to so many different things.
Right.
And it's like begin to make associations and connections, and I can pivot. And that's the way I've always been. It's like big hard times, people are like, oh, I lose my job. I've got another one the next week because it's like, oh, you need somebody in PR? Hello, I can do that. Needs a salesperson? Hello, I can do that.
Right. So
So there's meaning to it.
do you remember the first time? I mean, you've talked about being in that room where you had to step outside because you're overwhelmed with the feeling of I've got to pick, I got to choose, and I'm not good enough if I can't do that. Do you remember the first moment where you felt at peace, where you said, I don't have to choose. I'm okay.
Yeah, it was actually related to that moment, Andy. I walked outside because I was panicking and I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. and Sarah Elkins, who,
Uh-huh.
the godmother of No,
Right.
our fairy godmother, she knew something wasn't
Yeah,
right.
she's very good at reading people.
Right. So she came over to me. She's like, "What's going on?" And I was like, I'm spiraling. I'm catastrophizing." She's like, "Why don't you go and ask your client how they describe you?
Mm.
Like, what value you bring to them?" So I went outside and I called, and I will never forget Donna, who runs the agency that I do 99.9% of my work through, was like, first of all, she's from New Jersey. She's very funny. She's like, "Are you kidding me? Why are you calling me on this?"
Is this a joke?
Right. What
Yeah.
are you doing? What kind of place are you at? Why are you asking me what your value is?
Why are you seeing these
Do I
people?
not pay you enough? No. She was like,
Right.
"Are you kidding me?" Like, she knows me as being very confident and being,
Hmm.
why are you having this, you know, crisis right now? And I said, "No, what value do I bring?" And she said, "You're my utility player."
Wow.
And I went, "What?" She goes, "You're my utility player." She goes, "I know when the heat's on, we got to have a win, whatever position I put you in.
Hmm.
You'll you'll make it happen." And she's like, "You're able to wear multiple hats. I'm a small agency. If I can only hire one person, I'm hiring you." And I mean, I get chills still thinking about
Yeah,
it
I know.
because
I
it's
was like, I was gonna say I didn't want to interrupt you, but I'm like, my skin's like getting
like,
creepy.
I mean, it was like a whole weight came off of me, like the weight of the world. I'm like, "Oh, it's okay." And then I remember having follow-up conversations with Sarah Elkins, and she's like, "You need to read this book, Range. It's perfectly fine to be a generalist." And I'm like, "Oh my God, the therapy bills, right? That I could
Right.
have saved money." Like,
Oh
there's
my
my
God.
retirement. I spent
Right.
it all and going, "What am I going to be when I grow up?"
No, that's such an amazing way that came about too. I love hearing that journey because the answer is right in front of you, and it's
Mhm.
from the people that have been paying you and have been hiring you, and yet even with them counting on you that much, we still have it in the back of our head that we might not be good enough, or we could be second guessing, are they going to keep hiring me, or do they get value from me? And yet here's this customer saying, what is wrong with your head? Why are you even asking this question? Don't you know you're my go-to?
Right, right. And we know this intellectually, right? Like we know hire the person for who they are and not necessarily what they can do. But then we
Hmm.
don't behave like that
Right.
necessarily, right? We think, "Oh, I've got to be an expert in Google Analytics. I've got to really know SEO." And it's like, no, I just need enough to know if somebody's scamming me on it.
Right.
I need to know enough to advise people correctly. But it all basically all still comes down to who you are as a person, what you want
Hmm.
to be when you grow up, right?
Right.
Which is the real question, not what do you want to do when you grow up, but what do you want to be when you grow up? And for me, whether it's the poetry or copywriting or marketing or any of that,
Hmm.
I come to it all with what I've now kind of quantified as practical adoration.
Hmm.
So it's bringing this level of awe and adoration for what I do, who I'm doing it for, but also making it practical. You can't go way off on the yoga blah blah.
Right.
Still got to move a needle a little bit. So in my brain, I just get up every day and I go, "Okay, time to practice practical adoration."
I like that. And it keeps you grounded in kind of the metrics of, are things moving forward? How are they? I was just having a conversation with someone who was struggling in their business because he had this idea to start this business and he has two co-founders, but they're not nearly invested just from
Right.
a passion standpoint. He's like, how do I
Sure.
get them motivated? How do we get on board? And it was, how do you get up in the morning and have that where, he automatically does things because of the passion and he has the adoration, but not, he's got to bring the other guys aside with seeing the practical side. It's like, I love that combination. I think I'm going to call him after this and say, "Here, you got to listen to this podcast. You got to hear this word because it makes so much sense for what we were just talking about."
Yeah. Yeah.
But so you have your moment, you call your client, and then you're feeling now like, oh my gosh, I got the power of the world. I can just see the glow around you, at NLV when you're walking back into that room now. How did you re-enter the world when you came back to the conference, or when you walked back in, or when you went back to work afterwards? Did you have a renewed sense of confidence, or was it I gotta get my bearings here? And
Yeah, I did. It was a little strange going right back into the room where I felt like everybody was there that was very kind of much more specific about why they were there, what they were working on. They
mm-hmm.
had a specific business. I had several. I mean, at one point in time, it was never a shortage of ideas of like, oh, I can make a business out of this. I can make a business out of that. One point in time, I got a call from GoDaddy because they were like, you're one of our prime customers. And I'm like, that's not necessarily good, I don't think. It's like, you own 60 domains
Right.
that you've done nothing with, right? I'm like, yeah.
That's because I'm very universal.
I'm a universalist, right? It's like,
Yeah.
I'm still going to hang on to them, and I keep paying for them. I got rid of a lot of them. But I did go in there with, okay, I don't have to figure when, I don't have to be like everybody else in this room,
mm-hmm.
right? And it was a little weird because I felt like everything was geared towards having that in your head, like this is your business and this is what you're trying to grow and this is your passion and what you're trying to do and bring forth and birth into the world. And I remember people going, well, just put up a website that's robinbennett.com. And I'm like, oh, that's like, I know from like, my significant other is a chef, and he's always like, never work for a chef or a catering company that uses their name, the restaurant or the business.
Gotcha.
It's like, because it's all going to be ego.
Right.
So it's, I always tried to find that little kitschy thing. And, it's like, oh, I'll go in and I'll talk about biodynamic wine because that's what I like. And so I started down Mindful Wino. I started down all these different tracks. And when she said that to me, I went, I'm not unhappy in what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I really adore what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I do want to find a place where I can talk about poetry. Mm-hmm. And where I can talk about dreams, which are the two things, like start either of those conversations at a cocktail party.
Right.
Everybody runs in the opposite direction. Nobody wants to hear about the dream you had last night. And nobody wants to talk poetry. They're like, oh, no, I don't get run. So the fact that I have two beloved things in my life that I'm passionate about that nobody wants to talk about, I'm like, okay, I can develop on those on the side. If I have 10 people that it resonates with in, the rest of my life, that's fine. It just took the pressure off. Now I go to no longer virtual, and I feel like I'm like, Thomas, who is there, who's like, I, work in a warehouse. I'm here because I like to write. There's no specific, and I think it's just freed me. It's just really freed me to just go, I'm just me. I'm just here to learn. I'm here to meet cool people like you. I'm here for that reason.
Yeah. And that's really, I didn't know what to expect before I went to the conference, and which is really more of a retreat. Really, but it is, but I remember leaving thinking, I don't quite know what I got out of it. I felt good about it, but specifically for me, I was like, I felt renewed and energized, but a couple of weeks later, I was like, wait, what do I need to put into practice? That I like, you're trying to get to that practical side, right? Of, okay, what did I get out of this? But the relationships, the connections, the encouragement, like, you can't even put a number on that, because I've gotten so much out of just that first one that I went to, from meeting people like you and learning how you handle one piece or another of life or business. It's not even just, what's interesting is I used to keep everything very siloed in life. It's like, these are my business counterparts. These are my family friends. These are friends from, school, whatever. and I felt like keeping business, I thought the professional thing to do was to not blur the lines between, friendship and work. And as I've, changed things in life the last few years, that really wasn't feasible anymore. And I've realized that I don't know what to call anybody anymore, because I feel like everybody's kind of a friend, kind of I have people that are colleagues or counterparts, or, friends are also mentors, and mentors are also coaches, and coaches are also family. It's like everybody's got all a little bit of a different role in my life, but that's kind of how that NLV feeling is, just like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, we're just all here helping each other get to the next level. And I don't know, I just needed to go on that rampage.
No, I love it. It's so
But
true. It's like, what do we call our connections? They
yeah.
really are, they're more than just a connection, but they may play multiple roles in our life. They may be,
Hmm.
I don't like to call them supporters, because they, that's not their role to
Yeah, it's not
support
like
me.
exactly. And I hate to say, oh, it's someone I know through LinkedIn, or it's a LinkedIn connection, because like, no, that's an NLV. That's next level. Like, that's completely different. We're not just
Yeah,
talking about, someone that I, know through online and have never met, but we may have chatted a lot. I'm
right,
like, this is like people that I feel are vested in how I'm going to do as a person,
right.
regardless of if it's, my business succeeds. So it's a beautiful thing, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and it's true. And it's like I see a request from somebody from No Longer Virtual, and it moves to the top of the list, right?
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
don't do these podcasts. Like I said, I'm
Uh-huh.
typically, backstage helping
Uh-huh.
everybody else, and, working on everyone else's business. So the self-promotion part to me has always been like awkward. But I've done a couple now, and I'm like, no, that's my No Longer Virtual family, right? So
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you're willing to break the norm for us,
yeah,
because
I love it, and I always enjoy it.
it's an honor to have you on here. And I've tried to sprinkle in so that every podcast isn't like an NLV reunion, but
Oh, I know,
that's
but
like,
we can't help but talk about it, can
I
we?
know exactly. So I was like,
It's
okay, I'll
like,
go.
we're in on the secret. You're
Let me,
not. You get to join
yeah,
us too.
right. It's like, hey, you're welcome. Sign up. I mean, I don't know. Are you going to make it to this year's? I'm
I
excited
don't
about it.
know.
I know this year's a little bit
I
hard to
don't know.
plan. Yeah.
I really don't know, and that's a shame, because I went last year in Chicago, you
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
but it was like, everybody was canceling in the pandemic, and it was so super special.
Hmm.
But just timing wise this year, I don't know if I'm um gonna be able to swing it, which
Yeah.
is heartbreaking. But then I'm like, I'll be there at the next one. Hopefully there'll
Yeah,
be.
exactly. That's yeah. I I have it on my. I like this year I'll be there. Last year my son was graduating the same day, so it
All
was like,
right.
I was like, Sarah, if it was anything but family, it's like, this is the one thing I can't not do. But it was just one
I
of those. I was
know.
like, oh, this is really sad not to go, and that was before we even knew that it wasn't gonna be what it was. But or as I mean, it had that into. It sounded like it was beautiful with it being kind of, we're all in this space at this time, but.
Right. I'm not gonna say no, because you know me. I'm like,
Right. You never know what could come together, right? Yeah.
don't put me in a box.
We're
Don't make
gonna
me commit,
no.
Andy.
I won't. I should have paid attention from the beginning
No, I'm
to
kidding.
remember. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I have such a hard time making up my mind. I
Right.
mean, it's just some scheduling stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give people on how they could own their awkward?
You know, I think this may sound weird, but look at what tortures you.
Mm.
Really investigate what tortures you. I wasn't kidding when I said I spent a lot of money on therapy trying to figure out what I wanted to do. My
Mm-hmm.
career was always like, it felt like I wasn't succeeding. I wasn't being all I could be. I wasn't doing all of that. And I had a lot of torture around it. I created a lot of awkwardness. I felt like a failure. And I didn't realize how much of a weight it was.
Mm-hmm.
But then maybe spin it. I mean, I loved that advice, like, go ask somebody what your value is.
Yeah. I
That knows you. Maybe not a close personal friend or your mom, because your mom's gonna, "You're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're the
You've
best
always
thing.
been the best.
You're so
Right.
creative and
Yeah.
smart."
Yeah.
And but somebody who's worked with you or seen you that you trust,
Mm-hmm.
that can be like, I guess my advice would be like, look at what's bothering you and torturing you, and see if you can get some perspective on it from someone you trust.
Yeah, I love that idea because, you talk about carrying that weight and not realizing it. And I feel like every time I've let go of a burden, I didn't realize how much it was weighing me down until
Yes.
afterwards. Because I think we add a rock at a time to that backpack. So it just gets
Sure.
a little bit heavier and heavier all the way up the hill. And all of a sudden, you take it off and you're like, whoa, I can stand,
Right. Feel like
I
you
can
could
support
fly,
myself.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And just like,
Like,
I didn't know I
yeah,
had these powers, right? Where did that come
right.
from?
Right.
So that's
Surely.
beautiful.
That's true.
Yeah. And this idea of that thing that's torturing you that doesn't have to, if you can just get some
Right.
perspective.
Right. It's probably a story you're telling yourself,
Mm-hmm.
probably some
Yeah.
programming you have. My programming was that there was this perfect job out there for me. There was this perfect career. There was this perfect thing. And little did I know, you know, I could be, I don't know that I'd be a great janitor, but if I were, or, I've held lots of jobs tearing tickets at a theater, doing box office stuff,
Mm-hmm.
that there's a dignity and a joy that I've had in every job I've had.
Yeah.
None of them have been perfect,
Right.
but I've
Yeah.
learned, I've blossomed, I've done something. And so that when you can go, let me let go of there being this perfect thing or this one mission and purpose that I was put on this planet to do. I'm like, I feel like the self-help yoga world has like poisoned us and programmed us
Mm-hmm.
on a really bad level that it's like, there's this thing, this
Yeah.
mission, this one thing you're supposed to do. And I think it's really just being comfortable with who we are and being ourselves in it and bringing
Mm-hmm.
that thing, whatever it is. For me, it's that practical adoration, So that's what it boiled down to for me.
That's beautiful. Well, everyone, take that advice. Find out where you're being tortured and let that burden go by just asking somebody that you trust. Like you said, not
Yeah.
your mom, not
Right.
not that person that's not going to be honest with you, but not critical. That you can trust.
Yeah.
So, well, Robin, this has been awesome. I really
It's
appreciate you
fun.
taking the time, breaking your behind the scenes vow to come out and hang out with everybody.
Yeah.
And we just can't wait to see more of your poetry. Where's the best place for people to find you and support you?
Um, probably I'm on Instagram on Verse and Vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking that's probably where most of my stuff will launch. You can find me under Robin Bennett on LinkedIn as well. I don't do a lot on Facebook because it's just I keep that for like family, and
Sure.
that's how I know that like my cousin just had her baby or whatever.
Right.
Um, but those are key. I'm trying to work on a website, whether it's for Verse and Vibe or whether it's something more like Practical Adoration or something that is about that philosophy. Haven't quite figured out those details yet, but I am looking for that. But I would say probably Instagram's the best way to
Perfect.
be in
And the link
touch.
is in the comments below, so it makes it easy to click, follow, and
Perfect.
support. And of course, put all those little hearts on all of her posts and give her some love. So
That's right. And you can join us at No Longer Virtual.
yes, it's coming
You
up
want to
in
meet us in
June
person?
this year.
I know. Hopefully I'll be there in June, but I don't know for sure.
But once you get on, you're hooked. So if you don't see Robin this year, you'll see her next year.
Exactly.
So. All right. Well, thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you, Andy. It was fun.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. And everyone else, of course, as always, don't forget to enjoy your week and own your awkward. Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.